Talking to Mr. Charles Dungey, who is the professor at Tennessee State University in the Department of Music and with the Jazz Ensemble. Mr. Dungey, I think before we had our first break, we were talking about the influences to African American music, not only being Africa, but also Europe and other traditions and et cetera.
Yes.
Let's give you an opportunity during the second segment to develop that as a theme.
Well, we will sort of put everything under the heading of jazz, since that is an accepted term, considering the art form, all right? Now, the contributors were those people that were practitioners, musicians of several types. The black entity to music came from those musicians that oftentimes were in waif homes, such as Louis Armstrong, or were in an organization that played marching music, marching band music. Now, the development of their skills on different instruments had to come from those people, Europeans, that offered an opportunity for blacks to play these various instruments. Once the instrument was established and the learning process was over, of course, they started putting their interpretation of how they wanted the music to go, you see. So it was a culmination of different cultures here. And that's what we have to understand before we can even start thinking about what developed later on. Now, getting back to the Africans' contribution, a lot of people do not research a particular instrument, the violin, before Europeans introduced it in their arena. Africans had a violin long before the violin reached Europe. Yes, yes. It started up around Egypt, I think. You know, but this shows you that it was not just an instrument coming from a people that had, you know, didn't know what they were doing in the whole business. Certainly, they knew what they were doing, but at the same time, they were helping to produce this wonderful art form that we do call jazz. Now, with the development in New Orleans, jazz traveled. It went upriver, the Mississippi, the mighty Mississippi. Memphis, not so much, not in the early days. Chicago, Kansas City. Then we had white bands that had heard what the black bands were doing, and they developed their style of jazz music and took it